Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our second edition of the Scottish International Film Education Conference. We're very grateful to our hosts at the University of Glasgow this year for having us. We're very grateful to be back for a second year. We're hoping this is going to become an ongoing annual event. So hopefully watch this space for next year. We've got some kind of exciting plans already starting to percolate. Scotland is a small country with a sizeable engagement with film education. This conference and the Film Education Journal, with which this conference is allied and partnered, both come from that engagement and I hope reflect that engagement. We are, as I look at our programme today, I hope illustrates one of our priorities is an international perspective. As a small country, we're very keen to look outwards to the expertise of film education practitioners elsewhere in the world, particularly outside of the West. Some of the really considerable expertise in film education in Africa, in Europe. We have some really excellent speakers talking about film education in Europe today. I think our programme today also hopefully reflects our sense that film education is, in a complex sense, an interdisciplinary activity involving the activities and the perspectives and the practice of multiple different practitioners, whether those be film teachers in the classroom, whether those are academics in university, whether that's filmmakers in art schools or universities or outside, policymakers. And I hope, as I say, that our programme reflects that today. In the morning, once I've finished speaking, we're going to have an event which explores some of the recent work published in the Film Education Journal, and we have some perspectives in that from the UK and from Europe, talking about film education. After our coffee break at 11:30, we have a very special event where we're going to be exploring different perspectives on film education in Africa. That event is partnered with our friends in Africa in Motion, who we are very grateful to. Thank you, Justine. Thank you, Lizelle. And for that event, we are extremely privileged to have with us some extremely experienced speakers from across Africa. We have Firdaus Bulbulia, the director of the Zanzibar International Film Festival. We have the celebrated filmmaker Imru Bakari with us, and we also have Stephanie van der Peer, who has heroically stepped in at the last minute, as sadly Eric Kabera from the Rwanda Film Centre is unable to be with us for visa reasons. After lunch, we have an event which looks at the role of filmmakers in film education and kind of filmmakers teaching practice. That'll be hosted by my colleague, Dr. Johnny Murray from Menham College of Art. And we have two really interesting filmmakers with us today. We have Gideon Coppell, who teaches at the Manchester School of Art, who made the magnificent documentary Sleep Furiously in 2008. And we also have my colleague at ECA, Emma Davey, also a really interesting international documentary maker who made I Am Breathing, Becoming Animal, and slightly less interestingly, I will also be on that panel myself. And finally this afternoon, just bringing things again back to the classroom, we have an event which we're looking to both explore and to celebrate some of the many fantastic things that are going on in classrooms, primary classrooms, secondary classrooms across Glasgow using film, and we have a variety of very interesting speakers and case studies as part of that. Our partners in Africa in Motion have also got are putting on a film screening this evening at 7:30, is that right? Is that at 7:30 of The Psychosis of Whiteness, an extremely interesting documentary that is part of the wider I think the screening is part of the wider Decolonising the Curriculum initiative, and the director will be in attendance to kind of answer questions. So for those of you that fancy staying on, please do check that out. There is an evaluation survey on your seats. Please, if you have a wee moment, do fill that in for us. Kind of will help us kind of think about future editions of this event and kind of tailor accordingly. And as I said earlier, this conference is allied with the Film Education Journal, which was kind of set up at the same time as our first edition last year. And we are very proud to announce that the third edition of the journal has just gone live this morning. Please do check that out. It's an open access publication, so it is free to read. Some of our speakers today, in particular Steffi Donald, who you'll be hearing from in a minute, have got papers in that journal, so please do check that out. And more widely speaking, we very much hope that some of you in the audience today will consider submitting to us. I mean, the founding impetus of the Film Education Journal was to try and create a publication which allowed the space for different voices within film education, not just academics. We're very much interested in trying to encourage teachers working with film in classroom, to encourage filmmakers teaching film in whatever capacity, policymakers involved in kind of sculpting film policy. Please do consider submitting something to us. It is a peer-reviewed journal, but please don't be put off by that. Our approach to peer review is to find those who have some sort of proximate experience to do the peer reviewing. So if you're a teacher, we will look to other teachers to peer review. If you're a filmmaker, we'll look to other filmmakers to peer review. So please don't be put off by the fact it's a peer review. We're very keen to encourage a kind of a broad spectrum of voices. And on that note, here is my email address. If anyone has any questions about the journal or is interested in submitting something, maybe has half an idea and would like to talk about it, please do drop me an email on either of these email addresses here. Finally, just before I hand over to my colleague Michelle Cannon, who will be hosting our morning event, it just remains to say a few words of thanks. We're particularly grateful to Screen Scotland, who provided our core funding this year, and to Scott Donaldson, who's been very supportive of what we've been doing with the journal and the conference. We're very grateful to the BFI, who have also provided considerable support this year. I personally am very grateful to my co-editors, Mark Reed, who's here, Andrew Byrne, who sadly was not able to be with us today, and Pat Gordon-Smith, who is our head of publishing, who's incredibly supportive and diligent, and without whom none of this would happen. We're very grateful to our hosts at the University of Glasgow, in particular to Tim Barker, to Karen Lurie, to Heather Middleton, all of whom have been very supportive and offered advice. And I'm particularly grateful to Lizelle Bischoff, who has been extremely supportive. Thank you very much, Lizelle. Really appreciate that. We're very appreciative to our partners in Africa in Motion, who have helped us set up the Film Education in Africa panel and have supported some of our guests on that panel whilst they've been here. Edinburgh College of Art have provided some of the financial support for our Film Education in Africa panel. I'd like to say a particular note of thanks to Eric Cabrera, who was meant to be with us today. Eric puts in an enormous amount of effort into the visa process, and I should say on a personal level, I feel embarrassed and ashamed that we are in a country where someone of Eric's stature finds it so difficult to visit us. I really think that someone of Eric's stature is precisely the sort of person that we would be hoping to learn from at an event like this. So very grateful to Eric for his efforts in trying to be with us, and as I say, very embarrassed that those efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. And finally, thank you all to all of you for coming. It's going to be a really interesting day. I do hope that as many of you as possible will stick around and see some of the many different perspectives that we have on film education today. And thank you also to our wonderful speakers, some of whom have travelled very far to be with us. We're very grateful to you all for being with us today. Okay, I am now going to pass on to my colleague Michelle Cannon, who will introduce our first panel of the day. Thank you all very much.